Hey everybody, it's Jason with Parallel Reality coming back with you today with an article from The Federalist. This is dated August 27th, and I'm sure you've seen this in the news recently, at least if you're on X and you're not paying attention to the mainstream news, which I'm sure has told you the opposite of what's actually happening, especially if you are over across the pond, I should say. But this article is called Civil War is Coming to Britain, and I've thought this for a long time. I think I've actually said this in a few other videos too, something to the effect that, yes, civil war is coming to Britain. But it says, Britain's political leaders have lost all legitimacy, and the British people have the right to revolt against them in self-defense. So again, it's going to have to do with this picture right here. And yes, that is an actual real picture, but here's what happens. It says, by now you might have seen a video clip circulating on social media of a defiant and terrified young Scottish girl wielding a knife and a hatchet to fend off the advances of a migrant man who allegedly had been harassing her and her younger sister. You can hear the fear and anger in their voices, a mix of desperation and rage and confusion. You can also hear the man's voice taunting them. At one point, one of the girls cries out, "Don't touch my little sister, she's only 12. You might also have heard how the story ended. The police arrested the girl for possession of a bladed weapon. They didn't detain or even investigate the migrant man. And by the way, if you don't believe me, the link is right here. It's to an X post, so if you have X, I think you can still see it if you don't have X. Click on that, because yes, you heard that right. 2 young girls were accosted, and one girl brandished weapons because this guy kept accosting her, and she got arrested. Not the dude, her, the little girl. Says the entire sordid history of Britain's civic collapse, stretching back decades to the Rotherham, grape gangs scandal and forward to this day, is in some ways contained in the striking image of this wisp of a girl with knife and hatchet in hand facing down a predatory migrant. She is clearly desperate, abandoned by the adults who are supposed to protect her, sold out by the political leaders who are supposed to maintain the cohesion and safety of her city, reduced at last to brandishing crude weapons to defend herself from the foreign men brought to her native land against her will. It's a scene that encapsulates the total loss of legitimacy of the British government and a portent of what comes next, civil war. So it's not a Tim Pool thing, or it's a civil war and just all the time about anything. This seems like Britain's pretty close to popping off, and even Ireland too. So let's say it says, this isn't hyperbole, as I was just saying. It says, Britain right now shows all the signs of descending into sustained civil conflict and eventually open civil war. The ruling elites have broken the social compact by importing mass numbers of foreigners who are hostile to the native population. The government has repeatedly and consistently signaled to the ethnic white majority that there is indeed a two-tiered system of justice, and that they are on the lower tier. Political leaders and public officials have criminalized dissent from their agenda and sent police to harass and arrest people in their homes for criticizing the government. Again, if you don't think that's happening over there, there are many, 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 many videos of that exact thing happening. It's very much turned into an Orwellian society. This is worst and most stomach-turning of all. The British ruling class has failed to adequately acknowledge or take appropriate action in response to the Pakistani grape gang scandal, a scandal which is ongoing, a festering wound in the British body politic. Just this week, Rupert Lowe, a member of Parliament and the chair of the grape gang injury, released a statement saying the inquiry had identified 85 local authorities in which the gang-based, sexual, I guess I can't say it, I'm just going to say it anyway at this point, exploitation of children is taking place or has historically done so. The inquiry, says Lowe, has identified patterns of targeted exploitation by predominantly Pakistani males combined with gross negligence from public bodies. Says most telling, however, was the map that Lowe released with his statement, showing exactly where these grape gangs are. It should come as no surprise that they are mostly in working-class, economically downscale regions of Britain, where deindustrialization has gutted entire communities, created high unemployment, high rates of child poverty, and left young British girls vulnerable to predation by Pakistani rape gangs. And here's Rupert Lowe's tweet here, and that's where he kind of goes over where it all was, all the stuff happened. We'll keep going down. Because one of the really stomach-churning aspects of all this is how the maps confirm that class division plays a major role in the perpetuation of these grape gangs. The ruling class of British society has let this happen because the migrant gangs target working-class girls, whom the establishment elites see as expendable. From the political leadership in Parliament down to the police precinct level, the response to the massive grape of British girls by Pakistani migrants was to do nothing, say almost nothing, turn a blind eye for the sake of community relations, avoid anything that might seem racist, even as foreign predators were graping and abusing white girls en masse for decades. Yeah, it's a horrific story if you don't know anything about it. And if you have a strong stomach, you should go look into it. It will infuriate you. As it happens, the Scottish girl in the viral video clip is from Dundee, one of those post-industrial, impoverished British cities struggling with pervasive unemployment, youth poverty, and social decay. It's also one of the red areas on Lowe's map that shows where grape gangs operate. What happened there is happening all over the country. Girls who have had to endure constant harassment, and worse, from migrant men are beginning to speak out, and they are all saying the same thing. I am not safe. I am in distress. I am being hunted. Embedded in their plea is a damning question. Why will no one protect me? It says all of this is intolerable. It is too much, and it will lead inexorably to rebellion and bloodshed and war. You don't have to take my word for it. It says, back in February, Louise Perry posted a much-discussed podcast with David Betts, professor of war in the modern world at King's College London. Betts is not a kook. He's a specialty. He's a specialty in the study of insurgency and counterinsurgency, information warfare, cyber warfare, and propaganda, who has advised the British government and military over the course of a long career. Their conversation stemmed from Betts' 2023 article in Military Strategy magazine called Civil War Comes to the West, in which he argues that civil war is likely to dominate the military and strategic affairs of the West in the coming years, contrary to the typical expectations of the future war literature, and generally the strategic logic which shall underpin such wars. In his conversation with Perry, he is blunt, saying that it's not a question of if civil war breaks out in Britain, but when. And I'm not glad about that, but what I was about to say, which is that, I agree with this dude, and that's kind of what I said at the very beginning, is that, and I've said before, is that it's going to happen. It just seems that way. But I guess we're going to go ahead and find out the hard way what happens there. It says, part of the reason Betts decided to write the piece and speak out, he says, is because to him the signs of impending civil war in Britain are obvious and need to be taken seriously. In Betts' area of academic study, it was long thought that the conditions for civil war, the loss of social cohesion, high levels of social distrust, growing intertribal conflict, dwindling economic prospects, simply didn't exist in the West, or at least not sufficiently to bring about widespread civil conflict. That's no longer the case, and nowhere is it more apparent than in Britain, where the political establishment, both Labour and Tory, have broken the social compact by imposing mass immigration on a native population that doesn't want it. And if you don't know, just to let you know, Labour are basically the left-wing party over there, like the equivalent of the Democrats. The Tory would be the Republicans, though they have many more political parties than we do here. But just to give a very quick, not exact breakdown of those two political parties, if you didn't know. Because moreover, the immigrants in question come from predominantly Muslim and Hindu countries with cultures and customs fundamentally alien to Britain. Native Britons, especially the majority ethnic English, have taken notice of what is effectively an alliance arrayed against them of the political elite and third world immigrants. In England, a resistance to this alliance is taking shape in the form of a battle over national symbols that presages a larger conflict to come. Operation Raise the Colors, as it's called, is a campaign to plant the distinctive red and white St. George's Cross flag and the Union Jack in as many public places as possible, and that's going on right now, and the government keeps wanting to take them all down. It says it's an act of national solidarity and patriotism directed unmistakably at a hostile government that's obviously trying to erase the ethnic English majority. For the past week or so, images and videos on social media have shown Englishmen tying St. George's Cross flags to lampposts, painting it on buildings and roundabouts, hanging it from bridges all across England, and marching in the streets, holding their banners high. The political establishment has predictably responded by branding such displays racist. It is in no way, shape, or form racist. Learn what that word means before you start using it that way. It says, tearing their flags down, as we said, and throwing the book at anyone caught in the act. Yes, because hanging your flag is a crime, apparently. Like your own nation's flag. Like, what? Says the state of affairs will not go on forever. There will come a flashpoint, likely in the near future, where everything will change. Maybe it will be another incident like the standoff between the migrant man and the girl in Dundee. Maybe it will be a mass stabbing by a migrant targeting young girls like the Southport stabbing last year, which triggered a riot. Whatever it is, Britain will not return from the brink once it happens. War will be joined in earnest, and it will be a contest to the bitter end. Either the regime will be overthrown or the native population will be subdued. That's a frightening thing to think about, but when your government is not for the people, then you got a problem. It says, and here's the important thing for us to understand here in America. the British people will be in the right. Yes, they are 100% in the right here. It says, when the rebellion comes, they will find themselves on the same side as the American revolutionaries vis-a-vis, however that's exactly pronounced. I'm sorry if I butchered it, which I probably did. So they'll find themselves on the same side as the American revolutionaries vis-a-vis Great Britain, rejecting a corrupt regime that has lost all legitimacy and all right to rule them. American policymakers and political leaders on the right need to be prepared to see the situation of Britain clearly as it unfolds and understand it for what it really is, a justified revolution of the people against a tyrannical government. If our leaders do perceive it clearly, and America comes to the aid of the British people in their hour of need, then Winston Churchill's famous line from June 1940 will take on a new and profound significance, as the New World, with all its power and might, steps forth to the rescue and the liberation of the old. So, while it is a frightening thing that this could possibly happen, I totally see it happening given what's going on and just how the fact, like I said, that the government of Britain is decidedly working against the people. There's a two-tiered system of justice. And I think what came down, I want to say it was actually today or yesterday, that one of the migrant houses there, the judge kind of said basically like, no, migrants have a right to be there against like the people that were protesting against it. They're like, nope. So something like that. But basically what everybody's saying is that the judge sided with the migrants as opposed to the actual people of England. And that's the kind of thing that's going to be a problem. So once again, I hope this doesn't happen, but I think it's near inevitable. But let me know what you think about this in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.